Hi, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Soren from IPG Mediabrands. I lead our global client solutions team. I'd love to start with a round of intros for our crew today. And while you're chatting, I'd love to hear more about an ad that recently grabbed your attention and give me some insights on why you think it grabbed your attention when so many ads don't.
So I'm Andy Anderson. I'm the director of media at Lindt. I've been there for about 2 years now. Prior to that was at Mars and then spent quite a bit of time on the agency side. The ad that caught my attention most recently is this. It's a co-branded ad with the White Lotus and Kettle One and Tanqueray. I think it caught my attention because I might need to go to AA. But yeah, other than that, I love White Lotus, trashy TV, and but I thought it was well done, and I think that it was also like an equal blend of like leveraging like a culturally relevant touch point, but it was still very much brand first.
And personally relevant for you.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. Jackie Coffey. I'm the VP of Marketing, Media, and Performance at Sprouts Farmers Market, headquartered in Phoenix, about 20 minutes from here. Also a White Lotus fan. A spot that caught my attention recently was actually Kerrygold butter. If anyone has seen those, they've been doing a great job at tying at your emotional heartstrings. So that's one that kind of resonates with me. Subaru is also kind of a leader in that space. So I think Subaru and Kerrygold are doing a great job at kind of grabbing those emotions of their customer. Yeah, and nice to meet everyone. No one warned me that it was so bright on stage also. So if you see me squinting, it's because I've got some sensitive eyes.
Well, luckily they put me at the end.
Yes.
So I am Micheal Gumbert. I am senior paid media at Medtronic as part of our global regions. It isn't all that recent, but the ad that I always remember is the very first Army Strong ad. And it has a lot of personal relevance because that's actually the ad that made me decide at that point to enlist in the Army. So every time I hear that music, I tear up a little bit, and then I get immediately angry, remembering all that really stupid stuff I endured in the Army at the same time.
So there's lots of different, sorry, this is a hard transition. There's lots of different alternate currencies in our business, but today our group has chosen to focus on attention. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're thinking about attention at your respective brands. Let's start there. Jackie, do you want to start first?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So, brand marketing and the environments that we show up in are very, very important to Sprouts. And we've embraced women's sports as an area where we can really lead in the grocery space. So, we've created a platform called Powered by Sprouts. And this partnerships platform has really helped us find environments where we can capture the attention of our customer. So Sprouts right now is the official grocer of the Big 12, of the SEC. We're a back of kit sponsors of Angel City Football Club. And what we found is we are able to attract a new fandom, a new passionate fan in women's sports specifically, in stadium and then also outside of stadium. So my friend Ryan Spicer gave a great example a few hours ago about how Pepsi is able to personalize because they are official, I think, drink of the NFL. We're doing something similar for women's sports specifically and in the grocery market. So it's our way of pivoting a bit away from that conventional TV, linear TV and CTV into a very attention-grabbing environment of women's sports.
For us, we're kind of taking that test and learn approach. It has been a massive topic in the industry, attention-based measurement. So we engaged in a study starting in Q4 of 2023 with Lumen, and then attached some brand level metrics to it through Kantar. And we have been looking to roll that out over time, because I think, like it was mentioned yesterday, if you don't start taking the path forward to measure, you'll be left behind. And so for us in particular, it's very important that we do have the ability to have our message front and center and capture the share of eyeballs that we can, especially with like dark chocolate, because it's a it's a very polarizing chocolate. You either like it or you hate it. But I will tell you, I was not a dark chocolate fan until I learned how to enjoy it instead of being the fat American and just shoveling it in my mouth. Um, but what's happened is, because we've taken that approach to apply those attention-based metrics, tie it to like more of a brand health metric, it's helped us identify by channel where we want to optimize going forward. So we're very much still in the path of making this happen.
And I would say at Medtronic, we are also kind of in that early test and learn phase. The complication that we face at Medtronic, being a medical device maker, is that it takes just a lot of attention to really fully explain our products, especially when we're talking about patients, but even when we're talking about to our healthcare providers, because the thing that we have come to learn, unless you're talking to a large enterprise healthcare system, more often than not, when we say we're talking about a healthcare provider, who we're really talking about is their office manager, the person making those purchases, the decisions for the office, who might not be a doctor. So we have to take just as much time, and it requires just as much attention to explain the difference between, say, our Cobalt pacemaker and our Chrome pacemaker. I have no idea what the difference is, by the way. My dad has one, but I don't really know. And so, and then on top of that, you're talking about, for us at least, a very, very long purchase cycle. I mean, a purchase cycle that is usually a year plus from first introduction, and then you're talking about follow up with sales reps. So not only do we need them paying attention in the short term, but we need to keep their attention long term as well.
That's great. So you both just talked, or Andy and Michael just spoke a bit about kind of your test and learning approach to finding out if there's really something here. Jackie, I'm curious to hear from you. Do you feel that there is a direct link between attention and business outcomes? Have you seen any early evidence to indicate that? And curious if Andy and Michael, if you've seen that on your early stage journey as well.
It's a great question. And I'm sure almost everyone in this room has been asked by their leaders, tie your efforts to the business. So it's one of the most important questions for us to answer as marketers. We found that we're about halfway there. We're kind of in our infancy at measuring the impact of women's sports partnerships in stadium advertising. We have a traditional marketing mix model, but we've found that we actually need to think a bit creatively about how we measure certain environments. So we are building a model that takes into account more of the social metrics, the search metrics, and those in-stadium metrics. I think the macro point is that we haven't really defined the value of the impression, especially when it's outside of those traditional environments. And until we can get to that point, we have our good instinct, and we have a hypothesis that it's working, but we aren't able to quantify it quite yet.
And I would agree with that. I think we see the more that people pay attention, the longer that we're able to kind of hold that attention. However, we're measuring that. We're still trying to figure out how to measure that, quite frankly. But we do see that correlation. And it's one of those things where, like, the more I can hold someone's attention, the more I can just tell that they're investing in my content, the better business outcome. And I think Jackie brings up a really good point here, that it has to be tied to a business result. If you try to tie it to a marketing result, there are a million metrics that we can use to measure all our campaigns. But really, at the end of the day, for any brand and any agency working with a brand, it's really about driving that business result. How is this attention, however you're defining it, however you're measuring it, how is that actually driving a business result that can be measured.
So early indications, coupled with just being intuitive, or that it feels like there's something here, right? Higher attention leads to better outcomes. What are the challenges of actually adopting these new currencies or rolling them out with media partners? Challenges that you faced internally as well?
So I think that there's a multitude. So when you think about the alternative currencies, you've got to kind of land the plane on which one you want to lean into. Is it attention? Is it outcome based? Is it engagement based? Is it a hybridization of all of the above? I think that one of the biggest challenges from a brand perspective is, especially on our side, is that you can't fully move away from the legacy metric. So we are a reach-based planning organization. So what we have to do or had to do is just create like stepwise changes that would allow people to feel comfortable that as we're including things like attention-based monitoring and measurement, that we're not just willy-nilly like throwing reach to the wayside. And I think that that's really what has helped us. And quite frankly, from the results that we've seen, it's allowed us to kind of optimize towards network level. It helped validate for me that CTV was actually a higher attentive channel than TV. And also, it kind of put social further down the list where I thought it might be. So it's helped me justify my mix, my optimization changes, and starting to instill a bit of confidence within the organization.
Jackie, Michael, anything to add on that piece?
I would say kind of what I was just hinting at before. Attention it's one of those things where we all think we know what it is, but when it comes to like in evaluating the performance of a campaign, what do we actually mean when we say attention? Are we talking eyeballs looking at a screen? Are we talking the amount of time that somebody spends engaging with your content? What does it actually mean? And I think because of that ambiguity and how we actually define attention, it's really hard to convince someone to go away from those legacy metrics. Like everybody knows what an impression is. Like there's no debate about it. I mean, whether or not they're all authentic, if they're bots, I mean, that's a separate conversation. But at the very least, we can all agree what an impression is. And we can all, because we have been measuring that data for so long, we know, or at least at Medtronic, we know how many impressions we need to get a certain number of clicks, to get a certain number of views, that leads to a certain number of lead forms that we can turn over to a sales team. With attention, we just don't have that data yet, and we don't have a lot of partners that are kind of willing to go out on a limb, and instead of paying on a per 1,000 impressions, being able to take payment based on a certain number of views at over 2 minutes. So, I mean, until we start to get that data, we're going to continue to run into this problem.
I think the elephant in the room is that if you optimize towards attention, you're likely to optimize away from social. How do you reconcile that? Sorry. Were you all not thinking that?
So for us, I don't think it's throwing social out the window. What it is it's finding the correct way to utilize social and to make the creative and the messaging that we have there resonate through the platforms. Because simply like cutting down a TVC, and no matter how many ways you do it, like you can cut, and we've done it. So this has helped me prove like simply cutting down a TVC is not going to cut the mustard. We've got to make sure that whatever we're doing in social is fit for platform, fit for audience, and able to coincide with the larger brand messaging.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are not using paid social for awareness or attention grabbing campaigns. So it is purely a performance marketing strategy and tactic. So I think what Andy's speaking to in terms of being creative, talking to your audience, personalizing, that's where I think that's where it's going, and that's where it essentially is today, and that's the probably the largest use case. It is not a high intention environment because there is so much saturation, so much content. So comparing it to these other types of environments ultimately is a bit unfair because it's transformed into a performance marketing environment.
And I would say both that I agree with what was just said, but beyond that, we have to just look beyond social. Maybe if we want people to be paying more and better attention, maybe we have ourselves as an industry, as marketers, be not interrupting people quite as much when they're trying to watch their content, when they're trying to read things. Allow them that ability to truly focus, so that way when they do take that focus off that, they do give your attention, you know that you are genuinely getting their attention. That's not mean we abandon social. That means we don't abandon TV, but maybe cut down the frequency, pay really attention to our frequency, for it's not a commercial break on CTV or linear TV or where a podcast, every 7 minutes. You don't have to go to like a 30-minute right off the bat, but we could start to incrementally lengthen the time between those interruptive breaks and help people just kind of naturally get their attention back.
I like your point about finding the balance because, again, in defense of social, didn't know everyone was secretly working for a social platform. If you optimize towards efficiency, you can really, towards attention, you can really hurt your efficiency too. And so high attention media is not always going to be the best spot, the highest ranking one every single time. Let's talk a little bit more about the low attention media and the role that may or may not play within your media plans.
Low attention, as I now completely contradict myself, low attention still is great. It is those brief moments where, to Ryan's point, catching something in atmosphere where you're not catching sound, that prompts a reminder to maybe go and look at search, and search this thing later. It's those questions for Medtronic. It's incredibly encouraging because that's how we encourage conversations between patients and doctors. They hear this snippet of a Medtronic product where we're talking about a symptom, a disease state, some sort of condition that we have a product for, and it prompts a question that they go into their doctor. That's long-term good for them because now they're thinking about their health. It's long-term good for Medtronic because if they get to the point of needing a Medtronic product, hopefully they remembered it was the Medtronic ad. But these low attention things, like they still serve a purpose. They still have a place. I think what it will always inevitably come down to is finding that balance between keeping that low attention in a good way as opposed to still being able to have that high attention when we really need to explain something or move somebody to that conversion point.
Look, I'd love to have the biggest budget in the world and buy 100% like high attention media, but that's not real. In fact, a lot of the brands, when they see me coming down the hall, they think I'm the Grim Reaper coming to cut their budget more. But look, it's a delicate balance, like you said. And I think like the Bear presentation was amazing because we've been pushing too. Like when you have those lower attentive like channels, maybe you don't lean into just one like solo creative. Maybe it is like different stories that you utilize, different ways that you bring it to life. So there's a time and a place for it. And again, I totally agree. It's a fine dance and balance that you have to navigate.
Jackie, anything to add on the role of low attention media in your plans?
I think Andy summed it up well in terms of, it's unrealistic to just have 100% high attention in your plan. It needs to be a balance. I mean, these guys did a great job articulating that.
Great. We've been having this discussion for nearly a decade about the role of attention. What is it going to take for our business to really move forward? What would you say to brand partners, agency partners, media sellers in the room as a signal that this is an important metric and how you'd like to use it in the future?
We have had this conversation, and there are a lot of like really good ideas out there. there's a lot of good measurement that's behind it as well. I think the challenge is there needs to be kind of a agreed upon definition of what it is that we're measuring. And quite frankly, I think that we still haven't cracked the nut on how to operationalize it in a scalable way. So there's still a sizable amount of investment that has to go into the measurement process, like using a lumen, working with a Kantar. And so until we can kind of find a way to come to the table as a group, understand that it is going to take some investment, and try to like share that burden, I think that would help move it along quicker.
And then for us, it's understanding what we're buying, where we're showing up, having more transparency. I think CTV is the area where we'd like more transparency. We've completely moved away from OLV, just based on some of the inventory and some transparency concerns. So we are trying to find, again, the best environments for our brand. So for us, it's just having that, full transparency in terms of where we're buying, when we're showing up, and who we're reaching.
Ditto both of them.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to open up to the room if there's any questions that you may have, or I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you're thinking about attention and the relative importance of that metric.
Andy, I have a question for you. Before Lindt and Mars, were you also the how-to guy at Composure Magazine? Does no one else get that reference from How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? I had one laugh. One laugh. Thank you so much.
No, but I did kill the love burn, so there's that.
Hi, Melissa Sierra, USIM. I'm really big on attention metrics too, and I'm just wondering, as brands, if you're innately passionate about attention, or if that's being driven by your upper management, and or if the agencies are coming to the table with that, and how do you navigate that? And my second question is, with so much noise in the space about MFAs in the CTV space, why hasn't attention kind of capitalized on that moment to sort of thwart a lot of that bad behavior within the CTV space, and where you see the opportunity for that being?
I'll start. I would say attention, at least within Medtronic, is probably being driven mainly by me. I'm driving it up. It's not being driven down on me. And frankly, we don't work with a lot of agencies. And to your second question, I think a lot of it has to do with what Jackie was saying. I think until why attention isn't bigger, especially within the CTV space, until we can be 100% confident, we know where we're running, when we're running, and what we're running against, it's really, really hard then. I don't think I can emphasize enough, until we have that full transparency within the ecosystem, which in and of itself would be a whole nother panel. I think it's really hard to kind of get to those new ways of measuring our campaigns, especially trying to use attention when, like we've all been saying, we can't even really agree within an industry, within a brand, what we even mean or what attention looks like as a metric.
One of the things that's interesting about especially in the CTV space or OLV, is I think, well, let me answer your other question first. It's being driven by me as well. And our international team is super interested in it. However, with us being a more mature market, I have the luxury of being voluntold that this is going to be something that I will focus on. So in the CTV and OLV space, agreed. I think that the transparency issue is one of the things that is precluding us from really moving forward in the way that we want. I think also just getting the technical infrastructure in place, like even having conversations about what tools and tech do we need to manage our frequency controls. It sounds simple, but when I tell people I've got to take money away from working media dollars, then they're not so interested. So I think it is a double-edged sword. Like, yes, we want it from the industry, but we also, as a brand, have to understand it takes investment.
Andy, Jackie, Michael, thank you guys so much. Soren, excellent moderating.